Welcome to ACCI's podcast, a space where we discuss how a movement of Australian Christians is working to transform communities and nations one life at a time.
You know, it's not every day you get to speak to a bona fide legend, but here we are today with a man who is very much a legend in our world, in ACCI. Ross is our longest serving missionary. He's been on the field over 40 years. Ross, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you, John.
Good to have you with us. And 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, you were called to the field. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did that come about? What were you doing, and why did you decide to become a missionary?
Yeah, thanks, John. Good question. I got saved in a tent crusade that was run by the Bible College when it was here in Brisbane. And I went down to the altar and gave my life to Christ. And then an old Welsh missionary came up to me by the name of T.L. Evans, who is the father of Andrew Evans. Yep. And he looked me straight in the eye, grabbed my hand, and I had kind of long hair. I was out of the bikie group and the drug scene, all that sort of stuff. And he looked me square in the eye and shook my hand. He said, "You never know, son. You might be a preacher one day." And he was a missionary for 30 odd years in India and also Papua New Guinea. And when he said that, something just resonated in my spirit. Right. And it was like, yes, I mean, preacher. You got to understand, I didn't even know what being a Christian was at this point, but just something, I guess, imparted from that missionary spirit that TL had.
Yeah, sure.
And
wow.
Yeah, and that was.
Wow.
And then I started attending a church, and every time a missionary speaker would come, I'd say, "That's what I want to be."
Is it right?
Yeah. And I had a few theological roadblocks to work through before I got to the place where I said, God can use me.
Right.
One was I thought all missionaries were like super saints, untouchable. You know, when they would read their Bible at night, they wouldn't need the light on because the glory from their halo would just illuminate, you know, everything.
And that doesn't happen for you?
Not yet.
Right, okay, fair enough.
So, so I thought, well, that's not me. No. But as I came to realise, missionaries are just very ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Yeah, right. And so I guess the other roadblock for me was, I don't know where this came from, probably from the pit of hell, was if you really, really wanted to do something, that was not God, because God wants you to do something hard, difficult, to persevere and press through. Right. And it took me a while to get through that. God actually wants to give you the desires of your heart, and He puts a call on your life to do something for Him.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so those missionary speakers would come through your church, and they were missionaries, and they'd tell the stories, and something deep in your heart was percolating while this was going on.
Absolutely. Yes.
How did you know that? Like, what was the feeling around that?
I don't know. I was just inspired by what they were doing, and I felt, you know, this pioneer sort of spirit, just gripped me. So
did you then start a formal process? Like, how long was it? It's interesting that there was a seed sown, like on the day you were saved.
Yes,
there was a seed sown. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But how long was it between that seed that was sown and you hopped on a plane and left the country?
I got saved in 1971.
Okay.
I hopped on a plane in 1983.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So 12 years.
Yeah.
Right. So during those 12 years, were you in preparation? What was God doing? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, from day one almost, I was, okay, I'm here to serve. I did everything that was asked of me: Sunday school teacher, bus driver, deacon, cell group leadership, visit people in hospitals, whatever. In the youth group, I was the first one there. I was the last one to leave, sweep the floor, make it ready for Sunday school the next day. Right. So it was for me, it was all about preparation and service, because I figured if you're too big to serve, you're too small to lead. Yeah. And good. And then eventually I was put on staff at my church, which was I think at that point probably the largest church in Australia.
Right. And what was your role?
I was youth ministry, visitation, cell group leadership, those sorts of things. just basically what anybody else didn't want to do.
Yeah,
know?
right.
And then I went to Bible college as further preparation.
Right. With a view to going as a missionary?
Yes. If
Right.
anyone asked, what are you doing? I said,
Right.
I'm going to China. That's what I
Okay.
tell them, as a
Right.
missionary.
Right.
So I went there for 3 years.
Right.
In cold Katoomba.
Yeah.
And, to make ends meet, I was also painting roofs in the winter while it's snowing.
Yeah, good on you.
If that doesn't test your call, I don't know what will.
No, right.
And anyway, after Bible college, the last year I applied to the missions office to go to the field. And I went back to my home church first, and they said, we want you to pioneer a church at Mount Tambourine.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I've applied to go to the field. They said, well, yeah, but you're going to take time to raise funds and it'll be good experience. I said, okay, I'll do it for 1 year.
Right.
And so that was good preparation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you pioneered a church
Yes.
during that time.
Yeah.
Then
yeah.
after a year, you had, so to speak, your ducks in a row, and you left.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And you went to, you were hoping to get to China,
Yes.
but you landed in, where did you go?
We went to Thailand. But
Why didn't you go to China?
Well, let me just rewind a little bit. In the last year of Bible school, we had what's called the College Missions Fellowship. Well, every year we had that, but the last year I was the president of the College Missions Fellowship.
Right.
And that would give us air time to promote and inspire the students about missions.
Yeah.
And and there was a little bit of, I guess, anti-mission sentiment amongst some of the students. It was like, well, we've got enough to do in our own backyard. Yes, and you always will, but you can't stay in Jerusalem.
Right.
Yeah. So, and we were, I guess, bemoaning the fact that in the last 10 years, no one from the Bible college, no graduates had gone to the field.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, anyway, I said in our College Missions Fellowship, we're, crying and bemoaning, nothing's happening. We're trying to inspire people to go to the field. And I said, I've got an idea. Why don't all of us now, 6 of us in the missions committee, decide right now we're going to be missionaries?
Oh.
Whoa, you can't do that. You need a call. I said, well, Matthew 28, go to all the nations, make disciples of all nations.
Right.
But what else do you need, really?
Right.
That's the call.
Right.
And anyway, for me, that was a pivotal moment of that decision, even though it was a lot leading up to that. And then there was another young girl. She went to South Africa. I went to Thailand. And during the last year, we have a missions conference. Because I was the president, I got to speak the first night. After that, it was the visiting missionary speakers. And the night before, I'm preparing this message, and I think this is my last chance to give them both barrels, the Great Commission or the Great Omission. What are you going to do about it? And so I'm up there, it's probably 12 o'clock at night, and I'm preparing this message, and God spoke to me. And I say that with the idea that he really spoke to me in an audible. It's probably the only time in my life I can say I heard the audible voice of God.
Wow.
I mean, other times you get impressions, and God speaks to you through his word, and God leads you by his peace, all of that. But
You literally had an audible voice.
it was like you speaking, it was that clear.
Wow.
And I'll never forget what he said. Never. No.
Are you going to tell
Yes.
us? Keep us in suspense.
God said to me, and what about you? And I was, boom, it was like, I got angry. What about me? I've been preparing for years. I've been trying to knock down doors and no doors have opened. And what about me? You're questioning my motivation. And then I realized I was an idiot.
Right.
That God was actually saying, green lights, now's the time.
Right.
So the next day, I talked to my wife and called Pastor George Forbes at the missions office. Yeah. And I said, we'd like to apply to be missionaries. Yeah. He said, where do you want to go? I said, China. He says, well, and this was in 1981. Yeah. He said, you hardly get in as a tourist to China.
Right.
I said, okay, Burma, now called Myanmar.
Yeah.
He said, well, that's even harder. You can't do that. And I said, well, we're open, but it's mainland Asia.
Right.
He said, well, just today I received a letter from Pastor Wiratchai Goe, the superintendent of the Thailand Assemblies of God, appealing for Australian missionaries to come and help them.
Right.
I said,
put me up.
We'll go.
Right.
where's Thailand? It was almost like that, yeah.
Right.
So,
It was in Asia, which was a good thing.
Yes, I knew it was in Asia somewhere there. So that's how that worked out. And of course, years later, we're in China for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now working in Myanmar as well. So it's just interesting how God's timetable works.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So you go to Thailand.
Yes.
It's 1983 now.
Yes.
And you land there. What's it like? What's it like landing in a foreign country, knowing full well that you're not here for a couple of weeks and flying home?
Yeah.
And how is that different? How has that changed over the last 40 years?
Yeah. Well, for us, it's probably very different than people that go to the field today. We'd never been to Thailand before.
Right.
We knew very little about it.
Wow.
We didn't know anyone in Thailand. We didn't know where we were going to live. We knew nothing. It didn't speak Thai. I'd never met a Thai person. Never eaten Thai food, you know. And but we just felt this is the call of God.
Right.
It's a lifetime call. You know, we've got a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
And you know, we're here for the rest of our lives unless God tells us otherwise. So I think that's maybe a little different than the way things work now. And I'm not saying it's the right way.
No, right.
Because it's probably...
But you literally land in Bangkok airport.
Yeah.
Right? You get out of the plane and this is the first time you've had interaction with Thai people.
Yes.
It's the first time you've been to Thailand.
Yes.
And it's the first time you've eaten Thai food.
Yes.
Did you... how was culture shock for you?
It wasn't too bad. It's more culture stress that is little things that build up over time rather than boom. You know?
Right.
Well, when we got off the plane, boom! It was Thailand summer. You know, so it was the heat.
So the heat
well, this is different. Different kind of heat.
Yeah.
But we loved it. We loved the Thai people. We got picked up from the airport by someone on the national executive and took us to the hotel and waved goodbye.
Right.
And but fortunately, we met some American missionaries who were very helpful and were a blessing to us.
Right.
Yeah.
And your role there, what were you involved with?
Initially, it was language study.
Yeah.
We just felt that was very important because no one could speak English that we were relating to. So that was a big part of the first stage.
Right.
And then we were asked to go down to the south of Thailand, a place called Hat
Yeah.
Near the Malaysian border. We were asked to go down there and run an evangelistic ministry. So we were thrown down there. We had a team, all Thai team, no English speaking. So that helped to develop our language abilities.
Right.
So we did that for a while, going around the different provinces.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you went to China.
Yeah.
So tell us about that transition. What occasioned that transition and what was that like?
Okay, well, we were 11 years, 83 to 94 in Thailand.
Right.
Went back to Australia to kind of help our elder son who was going to university with his re-entry. So we went back there and we were planned to get back into Thailand but couldn't get visas.
Right.
So we said, well, Philippines is pretty easy to get a visa. And our ministry at that time was very regional.
Right.
So we are based in Manila, planning long term, but after 6 months, my first wife, Bronwyn, was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
So we relocated back to Australia, and another year or so there, she passed away, sadly. Sometime after that, I met Donna, my current wife, who was in the United States. I was running World Harvest Institute together with Kevin and Glennis Hovey.
Yeah.
She came down from China. She was a single missionary in China.
Right.
Came down to do our course.
Right.
And we met there.
Right.
And eventually
Married. And then you followed her back to China?
Well, we based in Sydney for a couple of years.
Right.
Doing ministry in different parts of the world, training ministry. China was one of them. We'd go back and forward. And then the China church kind of invited us to help train their missionaries, because there was a movement called Back to Jerusalem, where Chinese missionaries would go to the Middle East. But they were coming back as soon as they were going almost, because they had no kind of cross-cultural awareness.
Right.
So we set up a program and we did it based in Sydney, we'd do trips.
Right.
But finally we thought, well, why don't we just base in China?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your time in China and, what happened there.
Yeah, well, there seem to be seasons in China. We started off doing the missionary training, and then we did a leadership institute training underground church leaders.
Right.
Then we did youth concerts
Yeah.
with Australian worship bands that would come over. We had a community centre in a very poor area of the city we were living in.
Right.
Just a whole range of different things,
Right.
different seasons.
Training those underground pastors, right? Because that was a real thing in China, particularly at that stage, wasn't it? Like that was starting to take off. Like that was a real move of God, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what was that like, and how significant was that in terms of the Chinese population?
Yeah, very significant, because it's like about 100 million Christians in China, which is a lot, but the whole population is over 1 billion.
Yeah.
But it's still a significant chunk of the population. And some of the networks that we would work with, underground church networks, one was had a membership of like 10 million, another one 8 million. And they said, we want you to help train our leaders. And we're thinking, well, you seem to be doing pretty good without us. But there are some areas, some blind spots that they realised that they needed help with. And so we...
What were those areas? I mean, they've got 10 million people in their networks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking there half the population of this nation almost. I mean, a little under. But what are their blind spots? What are they lacking?
Yeah, well, one was balance between family and ministry.
Okay, yep.
Was a big one.
Yeah.
Because they would say to me, we want you to set up a house for the children of the pastors because they're going off the deep end.
Right.
And I said, well, I think we need to do training for the parents.
Right.
Because the husband's away preaching all the time, hardly sees his family.
Right.
And that creates problems in the home. I said, that's not the answer.
Right. Interesting.
A house for kids.
Right.
So we're able to help them some with that. And also, I guess, just areas of leadership in the sense of training up the next generation, because it's a very hierarchical system, and giving young people opportunities to serve, not just responsibility, but give them some authority and mentor them, coach them. And we had one group said, okay, yeah, we've done that, we've handed it all over to the young people, we're just going to sit back now. And that's not what we were saying. You need to coach them, you need to mentor them, you got the experience to help them. And so just every group was different, the needs that they had, and we tried to not just say, we got a pre-packaged deal here, what do you want, how can we help?
And then the door in China closed?
Yeah, a lot of the things that we were doing, because of the government, because of other things that were happening, closed to what we were wanting to do. And we also felt at some point that we'd been there 20 years, that this was the end of a chapter. And God was opening something else up for us. And it ended up being Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, where we relocated 3 years ago.
Yeah. And now you're about doing work over the border into Burma or Myanmar?
Yes, well, which was not on our radar at all.
No.
We went to do leadership development with the Thai churches, and we were doing that with the Thai northern churches, the Hmong, the Lahu, and the Karen leaders within Thailand. And then we heard about the situation in Myanmar, that the Karen people, all the minorities, but particularly the Karen, which is close to the border where we live, were being bombed by their own government, because there's a civil war going on there. And, torture, murder, rape are common occurrences. Their villages are bombed, their fields are burned, and they're forced to flee into the jungle. There's 3 million displaced people, internally displaced people now. So we felt, we're not prepared, we're not equipped to do anything here, but we have to do something. We just felt there's something we can do. So we bought a whole bunch of supplies, drove to the border with some of our Karen friends, got a boat, went across the river into the war zone of Karen state.
It's a dangerous thing to do, Ross.
It was, yeah.
Anyway, that's what you did.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
And so we went there, and it just changed my life. Just what I saw.
Really?
Like kids 16 years of age, M16, patrolling the Karen village, looking for Burman ground forces, and just the stories that you hear of the atrocities.
Right.
I thought, I said to Donnie, we can't turn our back on that.
No,
So that's been a major
right.
effort of what we're doing now,
Right.
just
Yeah,
helping them, and not just physically. We take in like rice, dried foods, tarps for temporary shelter, solar units for light and power, water filtration devices, anything they need at the time, clothes, medications.
Right.
So we take that in, but also we don't want to just give them stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they need that to survive.
Yeah.
But we also want to help them spiritually. So, we've printed Karen Bibles that we take in.
Right.
We pray for them, encourage them.
Right.
And when I say we, it's not just me, it's, the Karen people that we work with that are doing an amazing job there.
Yeah, great. Interesting. Yeah, great. Yeah, Ross, just to sort of bring some application, because, the stories we could talk about all day because they're fascinating. But if there's someone who's watching this broadcast who is feeling in their heart as they listen to you tell the stories, what you felt in your heart when those missionaries came to your church all those decades ago, what would you say to them? What should they do? What would be the next step? Just be practical for those people.
Yeah. The next step is preparation. Get involved in your local church.
Right.
Do whatever you have to do, whatever needs to be done.
Right.
And be a learner.
Right.
And I'd say that, have that attitude, get whatever training you need to have. And when you do ultimately go to the field, continue to be a learner. It doesn't matter what you're doing, because there's different roles that we can adopt as missionaries when you get to the field.
Yeah.
Surveys and research has been done, teacher, but be a learner before you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Whether that's here, whether you've got a PhD, you're working at Bible college.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Don't be a teacher first, be a learner first.
Right.
And the other one is be a trader, not a seller.
Right.
In other words, we come as a seller. This is my program. This is what I have to offer. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to learn.
Right.
But a trader is, okay, we're trading information. I become a bridge between this people and the wider world.
Right.
So adopting that attitude kind of helps you get into situations that would be closed to you if you come as,
It's a much more of a humble position to take.
Yes.
I would suggest.
Yeah.
I'm here to trade as opposed to I'm here to sell, or I'm here to give you what I think you need.
Yeah.
The whole trading thing. Talk to me a little bit about that, because the next question I was going to ask you was that, you've been there a long time. There are people, no doubt, watching this that have been on the field a long time. What advice would you give them? And to some degree, those two cross over, those starting out and those who've been doing it a while. Dig into this whole trader concept for me for a little bit.
Okay. Well, when you go to the field, some people take more of a, there's extremes. There's a colonialist approach. I'm telling you what to do. The other extreme is, I'm going to go native, they say, oh, where you come from? Who's your family? Oh, no, I have left them. You are my people now. You are my father. You are my mother.
Okay.
And we think that's very noble.
Right.
But what they're thinking is, okay, this guy has just turned his back on his own people.
Right.
He's just met us. How long before he's going to turn his back on us?
Wrong.
That's how they're thinking.
Okay.
They expect you to remain linked to your own people.
Right.
And so just simple things like saying, oh, here's some photos of my family back home. This is where I live. This is what where I used to live. This is my old car. People love that stuff. They like to know who you are, where you're from. You're trading.
Right.
Information.
Right.
And then they're talking to you about.
Right.
So it's a very natural way of networking and building relationships.
Right.
And
how do you deal when they bring their animism into this though? Like, okay, so you got another god. Great. Well, we love the gods.
Yes. Yeah.
Where do you draw the line, I guess, between trading and when do you get to a point where we'll go, well, hang on a minute, this is the truth?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, I guess the other diet is be a storyteller, not an accuser.
Right.
People love stories, you know,
Right.
and stories are very powerful, and they're less, I guess, intimidating or confronting than preaching.
Right.
Let me tell you a story.
Yeah, which is what
Yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
did,
yeah,
I guess,
yeah.
right?
And so I think that's the way we bring the gospel into that.
Right.
And also ask questions like, well, what's God already been saying to these people before I got here?
Yeah.
God's been here.
Interesting.
What's He been saying to these people?
Yes.
And if we can find out that, we can
Right.
kind of link onto that.
Yes.
Instead of starting with
Right.
whatever we feel we need to start with.
Right.
Let's start where God has brought these people to.
Yeah.
And
Become part of God's story and their experience.
yes, yeah,
And
that
play
makes
your-
sense to them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Very,
Yeah.
very, very interesting. I wonder if you could tell us a story about one person. Like, I'm sure there are many, many individuals, but you always find fascinating, you know, what God has done with the one.
Yes.
Have you got any stories
Yeah.
you could share with us?
Sure. And
Yeah.
Jesus was always about the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The crowds, yes, but he's always about the one. Probably the one that stands out in my mind is a young man named Ben.
Huh?
It's not his Chinese name, but that's his English name.
Right.
And when we were living in China, I'd go and walk my dog around the neighborhood. And one day I saw this Victory motorcycle, which is a 1,700cc Harley style motorbike. And you never see anything like that in the town I was living in. So I knocked on the door.
You're a motorbike
So I'm a motorbike guy.
yeah.
I knocked on,
Yeah.
I knocked on the door and no one answered, so I kept going. A few days later, see the bike there again and drooling a little bit. And knocked on the door, no one there. And then a guy pulls up in the car, and I'd seen him walking around before, and we'd said hi, but that was about it. And I said, hi, is this your bike? Yeah. I said, well, I love it, it's wonderful. Anyway, we just started building a friendship, and he'd come over to my place, we'd have coffee, and we'd go out for a motorbike ride together, and not talking about the gospel yet, but at some point he said, Ross, what are you actually doing here in China? Which is kind of a dangerous question to answer because you don't know who people are and who they're connected with. So I said, well, we're just trying to make a difference. We've got a community centre where we help the poor migrant people and their children. And he said, I'd like to see that. So he came along with me one day and was really impressed, donated money for us to buy books and food for the children. And then we had a band coming from Australia, and I said, Ben, we've got a concert going, you want to come to it? Yeah, sure. So he came along, loved it, not a Christian yet, didn't respond. And a few weeks later I said, look, I'm preaching at an underground church, would you like to come?
Wow.
He said, sure.
Was that a step of faith?
Yes.
Yeah.
For him or me?
Well, both. But for you, I'm thinking,
Well, it was because I knew him, I think, well enough now that he was safe.
Right.
And so he came to the church where I ministered and responded to the gospel, and I baptized him, and he just went on from strength to strength. And he was we planted a little church in this community, got him to share his testimony, got him to preach, and he just kept growing and growing, and now is a great man of God, leading groups in China.
Great.
And so I said to him, I said, Ben, you know, we've been here 20 years. If the only thing that I've done here is to see you come to Christ and grow as a leader, that's enough for me.
Yeah, right.
That's enough for me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And during all this time, I mean, this has been an incredible story of what God had planned for you from the foundations of the earth, right? But I do wonder what you've learnt about God through this process. What's God revealed to you about himself as you reflect on all these years and experiences?
Well, I think the main thing I've learned is that God's always faithful in every season.
Right.
Totally faithful. The second thing I've learned is God is never on time.
Right.
Never. Some people say, well, God's always on time. Well, it hasn't been my experience. Sorry, you know.
Right.
And it hasn't been Lazarus's experience either.
Right,
You
yeah.
know?
It was a few days late.
Yeah,
right.
And so he's in the tomb there, waiting 4 days, wrapped up like a Turkish kebab.
Yeah, right.
And Jesus finally comes, and Mary and Martha, you were late. If you were here 4 days ago, my brother would not have died.
Yeah.
So Jesus when I say he's always late, according to my
Of course.
expectations,
Yeah.
my timetable,
Your timetable.
according to his, he's right on track.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's a learning curve there that I'm still learning. You know, what's God doing? And
Right.
I guess the other thing I'm learning about God is he's the God of opportunity.
Right.
And there's a couple of words that come to mind. It's the difference between expectation and expectancy.
Right.
And we often use them interchangeably, but they're quite different. Like expectation is, we call it faith sometimes, but basically it's what I want. You know, this is my plan, this is my strategy here, Lord. Please rubber stamp that and resource it with people and finance, whatever I need. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but I think if we look at expectancy, the best way to describe that is Robert Schuller used to pray every morning. Lord, what are you going to do today, and how can I help?
Right.
So that's kind of being in the moment rather than this is all my strategy. 'Cause as I said, God's a God of opportunity. Sometimes it comes dressed up as interruptions. And
That's a great prayer. Lord, what are you doing today? How can I help?
It may not be on my radar at all, but we'd be thinking, what can I do? You know, can I be kind to someone? Can I be generous to someone? Can I help someone who can't help me?
Right.
And just, Lord, you know my heart. Pray for opportunities.
Interesting. Yeah. Great. And that's what God's taught you about himself, or what you've learned about God. But I wonder what you've learned about you. What's this 40-year missionary journey taught Ross about Ross?
Well, I've learned that I'm nothing without God.
Okay.
I've learned that many times.
Right.
And God's strength is made perfect in my weakness, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And, I've learned God can use imperfect vessels.
Yeah.
You know, still in the process.
Yeah.
Work in progress.
Good.
So also, I guess I've learned another two words, the difference between being flexible and being fluid.
Right.
And that's still a learning curve for me. But like we all can be flexible. Like, we tried this, didn't work. Let's adjust. Let's evaluate. Let's go this way. But being fluid is different. Flexible is not enough on the mission field. You've got to be fluid in the sense that, similar to what I said before, God is the God of opportunity, and He opens this little door here that's not in our script. And as water like flows to an opening or a cavity, we need to be like that too. God opened this little door here, and we didn't realize God was going to do that.
Right.
And be willing to go off script.
Interesting.
And just to flow into what God wants to do in the moment.
Right. And you used the term there, little door. And I wonder how important that is, because I wonder sometimes if we're looking for a big door, but it's just a little door that opens, and we don't sense or see the opportunity that eventually sort of opens and becomes bigger and bigger. Yeah. And I wonder if that was the situation a little bit with your current experience on the Burmese border, if that didn't start small and became bigger and bigger as you flowed in that direction.
100%. Yes. Because again, we didn't know where that was going to go. And sometimes a little door might seem insignificant. What's the point? But if God's in it, step in. And you're in Narnia all of a sudden.
Right.
You know?
Wow. Yes, right. Through the cupboard. I guess we'll bring this discussion to a close. Again, we could go on all day. It's great. You're a very interesting man to talk to. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who are watching this who love you and who are obviously aware of your current battle. Where are things at right now from that point of view, and what can we do to help?
Well, several months ago I was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, which is metastasized to the abdominal cavity and the liver. And I said to the doctor, okay, what does that mean? And she said, get your affairs in order. Spend time with your family. Like, no hope for you.
Yeah, right.
We'll do the treatment, but no promises there. You know, so, and I said, that's okay. I accept the fact.
Yeah.
I got cancer in my body. I'm not in denial over it. I've seen the scans. It's there. But they're the facts, but there's something bigger than the facts.
Right.
And that's truth, God's truth, that He's my healer, He's Jehovah Rapha. And so that's what we hold on to. And our last scan shows significant improvement. Like the tumour, the cancer cells
Magnificent.
are shrinking. So headed not out of the woods yet,
Right.
but headed in the right direction. Yeah. So
magnificent.
So yeah, just believing for God to finish what He started, and also praying. Okay, what am I supposed to be learning in this season? Because God's not caught by surprise. He knew all this.
Sure.
So I'm here for a purpose, and God's been opening incredible doors that again would not have happened. Not on my radar.
No.
One, there's a young Chinese oncology nurse, and she Buddhist, never been to church in her life, and we're talking in Mandarin and making jokes and just having a good time. And she said, what do you actually do? I told her what we did in China, what we're doing in Thailand, what we're doing back here is we visit churches, preach around. And she said, well, tell me next time that you are going to preach somewhere, I want to listen to you. I want to go and hear you. So she did, and she loved it, and I don't know whether she loved the message, but she loved the church visit. And then a few weeks later, she came again with two of her Chinese friends, and and a few days after that, Donna and I took her out for lunch, and she said, I think very soon I'm going to become a Christian.
Wow.
Because Chinese people, they don't make snap decisions, they process, but when they make it, they make it. And she says, yes, I think I'll become a Christian, and it's because of you and Donna.
Wow.
And really, we didn't do that much, but we just stepped into an opportunity, and God just did the rest. So that wouldn't have happened if we weren't back here.
No, but rather than getting wound up in self pity, woe is me, why is this happening to me, even in that crisis, you've been able to find opportunity, which I think speaks to the character of the man. So I guess you're asking us to continue to pray that we head in this direction.
Yes, amen.
Great.
Appreciate that. We want to get back to the field. We're going for a brief visit soon, but we want to get back onto the field and do what God's called us to do. Because and people say, you're getting a bit old, Ross, why don't you just stay in Australia? And I said, well, you're thinking like a job situation, a job is what you're paid for, a calling is what you're made for. And the call of God, there's no use by date on the call of God. There's no expiry date. So as long as we're breathing, we're going to serve God to our last breaths.
Brilliant. Ross, you're an inspiration to say the least. But just in talking to you, what does strike you is two things. It's your boldness, but it's your humility. The whole learning thing, and yet in this situation, you're stepping out and sharing Christ with the oncology nurse or the motorbike rider, whoever it is. You bring an incredible boldness that is situated in a humility, right? And bringing those two things together is not seen in too many people. But if I was to talk about the lion and the lamb, right, there you see the manifestation of humility and boldness, right? And I do think it does speak to the manifestation of Christ in your life, the lion and the lamb. And your journey has been fascinating. Your fruit, no doubt, will live on in generations to come. And I know I speak on behalf of the ACCI community or the ACC community, but even broader than that, the Christian community, when we say to you, we have nothing but love and respect for you, and we'll continue to pray for you, and we'll believe for the complete and utter eradication of this current disease. Right. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thanks for your time today.
You're very gracious, John. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of One Life at a Time. To play a part in making a difference or to find out more about ACCI's impact across the globe, visit acci.org.au.